The dismissal, the morning rush at Grind and Gold was always chaotic. But Zara Chen had perfected the art of controlled chaos. Steam hissed from the espresso machine as she crafted a perfect cappuccino, her movements fluid and practiced. She'd been working at the upscale coffee house for 2 years while pursuing her business management degree at night. Every dollar earned went toward tuition, textbooks, and the small apartment she shared with 2 roommates. "Double shot cortado, no foam," she called out, sliding the cup across the marble counter to a woman in a sharp navy suit. The customer nodded approvingly before disappearing into the sea of morning commuters. "Make that look effortless," a familiar voice said from behind her. Zara turned to find Marcus Blackwood leaning against the counter, his charcoal gray suit impeccably tailored, dark hair perfectly styled. He'd been coming in every Tuesday and Thursday for 3 months now, always ordering the same thing: Americano, black, extra shot. Somewhere between his second visit and his 20th, casual conversation had evolved into something more. "Practice makes perfect," she replied, already reaching for his usual cup. "Though I suspect you didn't come here just for coffee compliments." Marcus grinned, the kind of smile that had probably opened doors his entire life. "Actually, I wanted to ask you something. My firm is having a gathering this Friday night, nothing too formal, just drinks and networking. Would you like to come with me?" Zara's hand paused on the espresso machine. In the 3 months they'd been seeing each other, Marcus had kept their relationship carefully compartmentalized. Coffee dates, quiet dinners at small restaurants, walks through Central Park when his schedule allowed. She'd never met his friends, never seen his apartment, never been invited into his world. "Are you sure?" she asked, studying his face. "I mean, it's your work crowd. Won't they ask questions?" "About what?" Marcus stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You're intelligent, beautiful, and you can hold a conversation about anything. Besides, it's time they met the woman who's been monopolizing my free time." Something in his tone made her chest flutter with hope. Maybe she'd been overthinking things. Wait. Maybe he was ready to let her into his life properly. "Okay," she said, handing him his Americano. "What should I wear?" "Something elegant." "The venue is upscale Meridian rooftop." He glanced at his Rolex. "I'll pick you up at 7. As Marcus left, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that she was crossing some invisible threshold. She'd grown up in a working-class family in Queens, where elegance meant your best dress from Target, and upscale meant anywhere that didn't have fluorescent lighting. But she'd worked hard to expand her world, to learn the subtle languages of different social circles through her customers and her studies. Friday evening arrived with unusual warmth for October. Zara had chosen her one truly elegant dress, a simple black number she'd splurged on for last year's graduation ceremony. She'd twisted her long black hair into a sophisticated updo and borrowed her roommate's pearl earrings. Marcus arrived precisely at 7, looking devastating in a dark suit. His eyes swept over her approvingly. "You look beautiful." The Meridian rooftop occupied the 42nd floor of a glass tower in Midtown. As the elevator climbed, Zara felt her stomach tighten with nerves. The doors opened to reveal a space that seemed to float above the city. Floored-ceiling windows offering a glittering panorama of Manhattan. Marcus placed his hand on the small of her back, guiding her into the crowd. The guests were everything she'd expected: polished, confident. Speaking in the coded language of old money and new success, she recognized the uniform: designer clothing worn with calculated casualness, watches that cost more than her annual tuition. Conversation peppered with references to weekend houses and exclusive clubs. Marcus, a tall blonde woman, approached them, champagne glass in hand. "Finally decided to grace us with your presence." "Vivian, meet Zara," Marcus said, his voice carrying a subtle tension Zara hadn't heard before. "Zara, this is Vivian Hartwell, my colleague at the firm." Vivian's smile was razor-sharp. "How lovely." "And what do you do, Zara?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Zara felt Marcus tense beside her and suddenly understood that this moment would define everything that followed. "I work in hospitality," she said carefully, "while finishing my business degree." "Hospitality," Vivian repeated, her tone suggesting she was tasting something unpleasant. "How, ... refreshing. More colleagues gathered, drawn by curiosity, or perhaps sensing drama. The questions came quickly. Where did she work? What did she study? Where was she from? Each answer seemed to decrease her value in their eyes, and with each decline, she felt Marcus pulling away from her, both physically and emotionally. The breaking point came an hour later. Zara had excused herself to the restroom and was returning, when she heard Marcus's voice carrying over the ambient noise. Look, she's sweet, but let's be honest, she's just a coffee shop girl. It's not like it's serious. The words hit her like ice water. She stopped walking, hidden behind a pillar, as his voice continued. Come on, you know how it is. Sometimes, you need someone who doesn't expect the whole country club lifestyle. Less complicated, you know. Laughter rippled through his audience. Cruel, knowing laughter that told Zara everything she needed to know about how she'd been perceived, how she'd been discussed, how little she'd meant. She didn't confront him. Instead, she walked quietly to the elevator, rode down 42 floors, and stepped out into the cool October night. Her phone buzzed with texts from Marcus. Where was she? What happened? They needed to talk. She deleted them all and walked home through the city lights, her elegant dress and borrowed pearls a costume. She was finally ready to shed. The pivot, the morning rush at Grind and Gold was always chaotic, but Zara Chen had perfected the art of controlled chaos. 6 months had passed since the Meridian rooftop incident, and she approached each day with renewed purpose. The humiliation had transformed into fuel, every perfectly crafted latte. Every satisfied customer, every A+ on her evening exams was a small victory against Marcus's casual dismissal. Triple shot macchiato with oat milk, she called out, her voice carrying the confidence that had slowly rebuilt itself through countless early mornings and late nights. The customer, a woman with silver-streaked hair and an expensive but understated handbag, approached the counter. Thank you, the woman said, then paused. I've been watching you work for the past few weeks. You have remarkable attention to detail. Zara looked up, surprised by the observation. The woman appeared to be in her early 30s, with intelligent dark eyes and the kind of presence that suggested importance without needing to announce it. She'd been coming in irregularly for about a month, always ordering something different, always observing quietly. I appreciate that, Zara replied. Customer service is really about anticipating needs before they're expressed. Exactly. Woman extended her hand. Victoria Ramirez, Zara Chen. The handshake was firm, professional. What are you studying, Zara? I couldn't help but notice the textbooks you read during your breaks. Business management with a focus on operations and client relations. Night program at NYU. Zara had learned not to apologize for her circumstances anymore. I'm particularly interested in how customer experience drives long-term business success. Victoria nodded thoughtfully. Have you considered entrepreneurship? Question caught Zara off guard. I've thought about it, but startup capital, networks, experience, there are a lot of barriers. There are also a lot of opportunities for someone who understands service excellence. Victoria sipped her macchiato, seeming to come to some internal decision. I run a small tech company. We're developing a platform that helps businesses optimize their customer relationship management. Would you be interested in hearing more? Zara's pulse quickened. Of course, meet me for coffee tomorrow. Somewhere other than your workplace. Victoria smiled. I think you might be exactly what my company needs. The next evening, Zara found herself in a quiet cafe in Soho, sitting across from Victoria, who had transformed from mysterious regular customer into potential mentor. Victoria explained her company TechBridge Solutions with the kind of passion that made Zara lean forward in her chair. We've got the technology, Victoria said, but we're missing the human element. Our clients are businesses that depend on customer relationships, but too many of our competitors focus only on the data, without understanding the emotional intelligence required for genuine service excellence. You need someone who's actually been on the front line, Zara said. Exactly. Someone who knows that the difference between a good business and a great one isn't just metrics. It's making every customer feel valued. Victoria leaned back. I've Been observing you because I was looking for someone with natural instincts who could also think strategically. Over the following weeks, Victoria became an unexpected presence in Zara's life. They met regularly, sometimes for business discussions, sometimes for conversations that ranged from industry trends to personal philosophies. Victoria had founded TechBridge 3 years earlier after leaving her position as a senior consultant at McKinsey. She was brilliant, driven, and unlike anyone Zara had ever met. What surprised Zara most was Victoria's genuine interest in her perspective. When they discussed customer retention strategies, Victoria didn't just listen politely, she took notes, asked follow-up questions, challenged Zara to think bigger. You see patterns that others miss, Victoria told her one evening. As they walked through Washington Square Park after a particularly intense strategy session, that's not something you can teach, or just pay attention, Zara said. 8. When you're serving people all day, you learn to read micro-expressions, to anticipate what they need before they ask. That's exactly what businesses are missing. Collect data on customer behavior, but they don't understand customer psychology. Victoria stopped walking and turned to face her. I want to offer you a position. Part-time while you finish school, full-time after graduation.
Head of client
experience. You'd help develop our platform from the user perspective and work directly with our business clients to optimize their customer relationships. Zara felt her breath catch. Victoria, I don't have a degree yet. I don't have corporate experience. You have something more valuable. You have instincts and intelligence. The rest we can build on. Victoria's expression was serious. I'm not offering this out of charity. I'm offering it because I think you could be extraordinary at it. That night, Zara sat in her tiny apartment, staring at the business card Victoria had given her, Head of Client Experience. The title felt like a doorway to a life she'd only imagined. She thought about Marcus, about his dismissive laughter, about being called just a coffee shop girl. Then she thought about Victoria's confidence in her abilities, about the opportunity. To prove that intuition and intelligence mattered more than pedigree, the next morning, she called Victoria and accepted the offer. The transition wasn't easy. Juggling her coffee shop, job, night classes, and new responsibilities at TechBridge required a level of time management that pushed her to her limits. But Victoria proved to be more than just a boss. She was a mentor who seemed genuinely invested in Zara's growth. Stop apologizing for asking questions, Victoria said one afternoon, when Zara hesitated before suggesting a modification to their client onboarding process. Your questions are usually better than most people's answers. Slowly. Zara began to believe it. Her insights into customer behavior helped TechBridge land 3 major clients in her first 6 months. Her suggestions for platform improvements increased user satisfaction scores by 30%. More importantly, she was learning to trust her own judgment. Victoria noticed the transformation. You're not the same person who walked into that cafe 6 months ago? She observed one evening as they worked late on a client presentation. I'm still me, Zara replied. I just stopped listening to other people's definitions of who that should be. Victoria smiled, and something in her expression made Zara's heart skip in a way that had nothing to do with business strategy. But that was a complication for another day. For now, it was enough to be building something meaningful, to be valued for her mind rather than dismissed for her circumstances. As spring turned to summer, Zara found herself thinking less and less about Marcus and more about the future she was creating. She was no longer just surviving. The rise 2 years later, Zara stood in the glass-walled conference room of TechBridge Solutions' new offices on the 35th floor of a building in Chelsea. The view stretched across Manhattan, but her attention was focused on the presentation. Displayed on the wall mounted screen client satisfaction metrics that told the story of her professional evolution. Retention rates up 47% across all major accounts. She reported to the acquisition team from Stellar Dynamics, the Fortune 500 company that had just purchased TechBridge for an amount that still made her dizzy. Customer lifetime value increased by 62%, and our Net Promoter Score is consistently above industry benchmarks. The lead negotiator, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, nodded approvingly. Your client experience platform has become the gold standard in the industry. How do you explain that level of success? Zara glanced at Victoria, who sat at the head of the table with the quiet confidence of someone who had built something extraordinary. Over the past 2 years, their professional partnership had evolved into something deeper and more complex. Victoria had become not just her mentor, but her closest friend. And recently, something neither of them had been quite ready to name. We understood that customer relationships aren't just about data points, Zara replied. They're about emotional connections. Our platform doesn't just track behavior. It helps businesses understand the human motivations behind that behavior. The presentation concluded successfully. Handshakes were exchanged, and contracts were signed. As the acquisition team filed out, Victoria closed the conference room door and leaned against it, a smile spreading across her face. "We did it," she said simply. "You did it," Zara corrected. "This was your vision from the beginning." "Our vision," Victoria said firmly. "I had the technical framework, but you gave it soul. Without your insights into customer psychology, TechBridge would have been just another CRM platform." They stood facing each other in the empty conference room, the weight of their shared achievement settling between them. The acquisition meant financial security for both of them, but it also meant the end of their small, intimate company culture. Victoria would become a vice president at Stellar Dynamics, overseeing multiple divisions. Zara would lead a team of 50 as director of client experience strategy. "You nervous about the transition?" Victoria asked. Terrified, Zara admitted. "A year ago, I was still making lattes. Now I'm going to be presenting 2 Fortune 500 executives." "You've been presenting 2 Fortune 500 executives for months," Victoria pointed out. "You just did it. Again, brilliantly. The only difference now is the title on your business card." That evening, they celebrated at a small wine bar in the village, the kind of place that felt worlds away from the corporate environment they'd just navigated. Victoria had loosened her hair from its professional updo, and in the dim lighting, she looked younger, more relaxed. "Can I ask you something?" Victoria said, swirling her glass of Bordeaux. "Of course. What happened to that guy?" "The one who made you so guarded when we first met." Zara considered the question. She rarely thought about Marcus anymore, but when she did, the pain had been replaced by something closer to gratitude. His dismissal had forced her to prove her worth to herself rather than seeking validation from others. "Was looking for acceptance in the wrong places," she said finally. "I thought I needed to fit into his world, but what I actually needed was to build my own." Victoria nodded thoughtfully. "I've been thinking about that a lot lately. It's about building something authentic rather than fitting into existing structures." There was something in her tone that made Zara look up from her wine. Victoria was studying her with an intensity that had nothing to do with business strategy. "Zara," Victoria began, then stopped. "This might complicate things, but I need to tell you something." Zara's heart began to race, though she tried to keep her expression neutral. "What is it?" "It's past 2 years. Working with you, getting to know you." Victoria paused, seeming to gather courage. "I think I'm falling in love with you." Words hung in the air between them, transforming everything and nothing simultaneously. Zara realized that on some level, she'd been waiting for this moment, hoping for it while being afraid to acknowledge it. "That would complicate things," Zara said slowly, "if it weren't completely mutual." Victoria's smile was radiant. "Really? Really?" Zara reached across the small table and took Victoria's hand. "Though I have to admit I've never been involved with my boss before. Technically, we're both about to have new bosses," Victoria pointed out. "Clean slate." The transition to Stellar Dynamics proved smoother than either of them had anticipated. Victoria's new role gave her oversight of 3 customer-facing divisions, while Zara found herself leading a team that implemented their client experience strategies across the company's entire portfolio. The romantic relationship remained private but steady, built on the foundation of mutual respect and shared ambition that had brought them together professionally. 6 months into their new positions, Zara received an unexpected piece of mail. At her apartment, a cream-colored envelope with elegant calligraphy addressing her by her full name. Inside was a wedding invitation. Marcus Blackwood and Priya Sharma Patel would be married at the Plaza Hotel, with reception to follow. The invitation was formal, expensive, and entirely impersonal except for a handwritten note at the bottom. Would love to see you there. Zara showed the invitation to Victoria over dinner at their favorite restaurant. Do you want to go? Victoria asked, studying the invitation with professional interest. I'm curious, Zara admitted. Not about him, but about who I've become. Does that make sense? Victoria smiled. Perfect sense. Besides, the plaza is one of Stellar's properties. I could probably arrange for us to have a very nice evening, if you want company. Oh, I should mention that Stellar just signed a contract to handle all event management for the plaza's corporate events. I'm going to be overseeing their hospitality operations. Zara stared at her. You're going to be his wedding vendor in a way? Victoria's smile turned mischievous. Life has an interesting sense of humor, doesn't it? They walked home through the city streets. Zara felt a sense of completion settling over her. She'd built a career she loved, found someone who valued her for exactly who she was, and discovered that success wasn't about proving anything to people who had dismissed her. It was about creating something meaningful with people who believed. In her potential, the wedding invitation was just paper now, curiosity from a life that felt like it belonged to someone else entirely. The invitation, the Saturday morning sun, streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the apartment. Zara now shared with Victoria and Tribeca. It was a far cry from her old shared space in Queen's hardwood floors, exposed brick, a kitchen, island where she currently sat with her laptop, reviewing the final details for Marcus's wedding reception. The irony is almost too perfect, Victoria said, setting down 2 cups of coffee and settling beside Zara on the modern sectional sofa. 3 years ago, he dismissed you as just a coffee shop girl, and now you're essentially his boss for... The day Zara scrolled through the event management software on her screen. As Stellar Dynamics Director of Client Experience Strategy, she'd been asked to personally oversee the plaza's hospitality coordination for high-profile events. Marcus's wedding had landed on her desk 3 weeks ago, and she'd been debating. Ever since whether to delegate it or handle it herself, technically, we're just ensuring quality control, Zara said, though she couldn't suppress a smile. The plaza's reputation reflects on Stellar now. And how do you feel about seeing him again? Zara considered the question seriously. When she'd first received the wedding invitation, she'd felt a flutter of old anxiety with seeing Marcus. Bring back those feelings of inadequacy? But as the weeks passed, she'd realized something remarkable. She felt nothing but mild curiosity about the man who had once defined her self-worth. Honestly, I'm more interested in meeting his bride. She said, from what I've gathered, Priya Sharma Patel is brilliant, Harvard MBA, successful venture capitalist. She seems like someone I'd actually want to have a conversation with. Victoria laughed. Only you would turn your ex's wedding into a networking opportunity. It's not networking, Zara protested. It's just have changed so much since then. I'm curious about what drew 2 people together when one of them is capable of the kind of casual cruelty I experienced. They'd decided to attend together, though they'd kept their relationship private in most professional settings. Victoria would be there in her capacity as a Stellar executive, ensuring the corporate partnership ran smoothly. Zara would manage the client experience, making sure every detail reflected the excellence that had made her reputation. What are you going to wear? Victoria asked. Zara gestured toward the bedroom, where a midnight blue dress hung on the closet door. It was elegant without being flashy, sophisticated without trying too hard. The kind of dress worn by someone who had nothing to prove. Perfect, Victoria said. Confident but not competitive. The week leading up to the wedding flew by in a whirlwind of coordination calls, vendor meetings, and final details. Zara found herself genuinely invested in making the event flawless. Not because of Marcus, but because professional excellence had become a matter of personal pride. Friday evening, she stood in the plaza's grand ballroom, watching the final. Set up with the eye of someone who understood that perfection lay in anticipating problems before they occurred. The flowers were arranged precisely. The lighting created the perfect ambience. And every staff member had been briefed on their role. In creating a seamless experience, everything looks incredible, said a voice behind her. Zara turned to find a petite woman with intelligent dark eyes and a warm smile. She was clearly Indian American, probably in her late 20s, with the kind of presence that suggested both competence and kindness. "You must be Priya," Zara said, extending her hand. "I'm Zara Chen from Stellar Dynamics. I've been coordinating with your wedding planner." "Oh my God, you're the one who caught the catering error." "Out!" Priya's face lit up. "Marcus's mother has a severe shellfish allergy, and somehow it got missed in the original planning. Your team's attention to detail probably saved us from a medical emergency." "Just doing our job," Zara said, but she was genuinely pleased. This was exactly why she loved her work, the small details that made huge differences in people's most important moments. "Can I ask you something?" Priya lowered her voice slightly. "Marcus mentioned he knows you from before. He seemed uncomfortable. When your name came up in the vendor meetings, Zara felt a moment of surprise. She hadn't expected Marcus to remember her, much less mention her to his fiancée. "We dated briefly a few years ago," she said carefully. "It didn't end well." Priya nodded knowingly. "He can be difficult. I love him. But he has some growing up to do when it comes to understanding people outside his immediate social circle." There was something in Priya's tone that suggested she knew more about Marcus's character flaws than she was comfortable with. Zara found herself genuinely curious about this woman who seemed so different from the type of person she'd expected. "Marcus to marry. If you don't mind me asking, what drew you to him?" Priya smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Honestly, our families have been friends for years. Sometimes the practical choice seems like the right choice, especially when everyone around you is convinced it's perfect." The words hung in the air with the weight of someone who'd convinced herself of something she didn't entirely believe. Zara recognized the tone she'd used it herself when defending her relationship with Marcus. To her concerned roommates, "Well," Zara said gently, "I hope tomorrow is everything you want it to be." "Thank you." "And Zara," Priya hesitated. "Whatever happened between you and Marcus, I can tell you're someone who chose to build something better rather than just harbor resentment. That says a lot about your character." As Priya walked away, Zara felt an unexpected pang of sympathy. Tomorrow's bride was clearly intelligent and kind, but she was walking into a marriage with someone who might never fully appreciate those qualities. Victoria appeared at her elbow. "How are you feeling about tomorrow?" "Ready," Zara said, and realized she meant it. "Though I think the bride deserves better than what she's getting." "And the groom?" Zara watched Marcus across the ballroom, directing staff with the entitled impatience she remembered well. He looked successful, well-dressed, exactly like the man she'd once thought she wanted to impress. "The groom is getting exactly what he chose," she said. "A beautiful, successful woman who will look perfect at business functions and never challenge him to grow." Victoria slipped her hand into Zara's. "I'm proud of who you've become." "I'm proud of who we've become," Zara corrected. 3 years ago, I was looking for someone to validate my worth. Now I'm with someone who helps me create my own." They left the plaza hand in hand, walking through the city streets that had witnessed Zara's transformation from heartbroken coffee shop employee to successful executive. Tomorrow would be the final chapter of an old story, but tonight belonged to the life they were building together. The revelation, the grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel had been transformed into something from a fairy tale. Thousands of white roses cascaded from crystal chandeliers, and soft candlelight created an atmosphere of timeless elegance. Zara stood near the entrance, clipboard discreetly hidden behind her evening bag. Watching the seamless execution of months of planning, she wore the midnight blue dress with quiet confidence. Her hair swept into an elegant chignon. Victoria stood beside her in charcoal gray, looking every inch the successful executive she'd become. They made a striking pair, though few guests would recognize the significance of their presence. "Everything looks perfect," Victoria murmured, squeezing Zara's hand briefly. "You should be proud." The ceremony had gone flawlessly. Priya had looked radiant in her silk and gold, sorry for the Indian ceremony earlier, then stunning in her white Vera Wang gown for the Christian service. Marcus had appeared appropriately groomily handsome, nervous, and entirely focused on the social significance of the moment. Now, as cocktail hour began, Zara found herself genuinely invested in ensuring every guest felt welcomed and every detail reflected the excellence that had become her professional trademark. She moved through the crowd with practiced ease, checking with staff, adjusting small details, and managing the invisible logistics that made elegant events appear effortless. "Excuse me," a familiar voice said behind her. "Are you with the hotel?" Zara turned slowly, meeting Marcus's eyes for the first time in 3 years. He looked older, more polished, but there was something hollow in his expression that she hadn't noticed when they were dating. "Congratulations, Marcus," she said warmly. "Your wedding is beautiful. Priya seems lovely." He stared at her for a moment, clearly struggling to reconcile the poised woman before him with his memories of the insecure barista he'd dismissed. "Zara, I wasn't sure you'd come. I wouldn't have missed it," she said simply. "This is exactly the kind of event I love working on." "Working on?" Confusion flickered across his face. "I'm the Director of Client Experience Strategy for Stellar Dynamics. We oversee hospitality operations for the plaza now." She smiled genuinely. "I've been personally coordinating your wedding for the past month." The color drained from Marcus's face as the implications sank in. The woman he'd once called just a coffee shop girl had spent weeks ensuring his wedding day was perfect. She now held a position that placed her, in this context, as essentially his superior. "You've been managing our wedding? Among other things, your wife specifically requested someone who understood the importance of cultural sensitivity for the dual ceremony format. I have experience with multicultural events." Zara's tone was professional, warm, entirely without malice. "She's remarkable, by the way. You're very fortunate." Marcus opened his mouth to respond, but Victoria appeared at Zara's elbow. Effortlessly elegant and clearly comfortable in these surroundings. "Darling, the photographer wants to discuss the timeline for the reception shots," Victoria said, then turned to Marcus with polite interest. "You must be the groom." "Congratulations. This is Marcus Blackwood," Zara said. "Marcus, this is Victoria Ramirez, my partner. She's a vice president at Stellar Dynamics." The word partner hung in the air with deliberate ambiguity, though Victoria's proprietary hand on Zara's lower back made the nature of their relationship unmistakable to anyone paying attention. Marcus's handshake with Victoria was mechanical, his mind clearly racing to process the scene before him. The woman he'd dismissed as beneath his social station was now professionally overseeing his wedding. Personally successful and romantically involved with someone who radiated the kind of effortless sophistication he'd always tried to project. "I should find Priya," he said abruptly. "Thank you for ... everything." As he walked away, Victoria raised an eyebrow. "Was that as satisfying as you thought it would be?" Zara considered the question seriously. Actually, it was mostly sad. He looked so ... diminished. Odd. Because of what I've achieved. But because he's still the same person who thinks worth is measured by social status. They watched Marcus across the room where he'd found Priya near the head table. Even from a distance, it was clear their conversation was strained. Priya's body language suggested frustration, while Marcus appeared defensive. "Trouble in paradise?" Victoria observed. "I think Priya is realizing what she's gotten herself into," Zara said. "Yesterday she mentioned that this marriage was largely a practical decision. I suspect she's starting to understand the emotional cost of practical decisions." As if summoned by their conversation, Priya approached them, her smile strained but genuine. "Zara, I wanted to thank you again. Every detail has been absolutely perfect." She glanced back toward Marcus, then continued quietly. "I also wanted to apologize. Marcus told me about your history, and I realized this situation might have been uncomfortable for you." "Not at all," Zara said sincerely. "This is my job, and I'm good at it. Your happiness today was my only concern. You're very kind." Priya's smile became more genuine. "Marcus said you used to work at a coffee shop." "I did, for 2 years while finishing my degree. He seemed to think that made you ... unsuitable." Priya's tone carried a note of distaste. "I told him that working while pursuing an education shows character, not inadequacy." Victoria and Zara exchanged a look. This woman was definitely too good for Marcus. Well, Victoria said diplomatically, different people have different perspectives on what constitutes achievement. Indeed. Priya studied Victoria with intelligent eyes. What do you do, Victoria? I founded a tech company that was recently acquired by Stellar Dynamics. Now I oversee multiple divisions focused on customer relationship optimization. Impressive. And how did you and Zara meet? She was working at a coffee shop near my office. Victoria said with a smile. I watched her work for weeks before I realized she was exactly what my company needed. Best business decision I ever made. The contrast wasn't lost on any of them. Where Marcus had seen limitation, Victoria had seen potential. Where Marcus had found embarrassment, Victoria had found inspiration. I should get back to my guests, Priya said, but she hesitated. Zara, if you ever want to discuss career opportunities in venture capital, please reach out. Someone with your combination of customer insight and strategic thinking would be very valuable in our field. As Priya walked away, Zara felt a moment of genuine surprise. Did she just offer me a job? I think she offered you an escape route, Victoria said thoughtfully, for when she inevitably needs one herself. They spent the rest of the evening ensuring the reception ran smoothly, then quietly departed before the last dance. As they walked through the plaza's marble lobby, Zara felt a profound sense of closure settling over her. Any regrets? Victoria asked, as they stepped onto Fifth Avenue. Only one, Zara said, slipping her hand into Victoria's. I regret not realizing sooner that his opinion never mattered. I wasted too much time trying to prove my worth to someone who was never capable of recognizing it. And now I know that the right person doesn't need convincing. They see your value from the beginning and help you build on it. As they walked home through the city streets, Zara realized that Marcus's wedding had given her something she hadn't expected, not revenge or vindication, but perspective. She'd spent 3 years becoming someone she was proud to be, building a life filled with meaningful work and authentic love. Behind them, the plaza glittered in the night, hosting a celebration that felt more like a beautiful facade than a foundation for lasting happiness. Ahead of them lay their shared apartment, their combined future, and the quiet satisfaction of having built something real together. The last laugh, Zara realized, wasn't about Marcus seeing her success. It was about her no longer needing him to see it at all.